actually as simple as filling up this online form. So how does this exactly work? See, getnotify.com is actually very, very interesting. What it does is, it allows you to create a tracking photograph or a tracking image. Once you've created a tracking photograph or image, you copy it from this website getnotify.com and you paste it into the body of the email that you're sending to the victim. Right? So you create an email. In that email you type whatever you want. Imagine that the victim is your friend. So in the email you can type something like, hey dude, what's up? Let's go for a movie tonight. So the email could be anything. But inside that email, along with the text of the email, you also include a photograph that has been created by getnotify.com. And the best part is, the photograph will just be this small white colored button. So this small white color button will be the photograph that you will send to your friend. And there are a lot of advantages of using this small white colored image. Because number one, it's very small. And number two, it's white in color. So white colored image on the white colored background of the email that you're sending to your friend will become completely invisible. Because white on white is white. So it's invisible. So your friend receives an email from you, and your friend thinks that you're trying to make a movie plan with them. But in reality, that email contains this tracking photograph or image. And as soon as your friend opens the email, your friend doesn't need to download anything, doesn't need to click on anything, doesn't need to install anything. By just opening your email, your friend is also opening this tracking image. And once this tracking image gets opened on your friend's machine, within a few seconds, your friend's IP address gets sent to getnotify.com. And getnotify.com will then send an email to you. And in that email, your friend's IP address will be mentioned. As simple as that. So let me now give a demonstration to all of you of how exactly this works. So if all of you look at the screen, I have logged into my Gmail account. And I'm going to send an email and try and find out the victim's IP address. So for today's demonstration, let me send the email to myself. Right? So I send the email to my own email address, FADIA or ANKIT@gmail.com. The subject of the email will be movie plans. And the body of the email could be something as simple as, hey dude, let's go for a movie tonight. Let me know. So it doesn't matter what you type in the body of the email. The next step is, you need to open up your browser and connect to getnotify.com. So I open up getnotify.com and I need to fill up this form. So step number one, you type in your own email address where you want the IP address information to be sent. So I type my own email address. Step number two, you got to type the victim's email address over here. So in this case, the victim happens to be me itself. So I type my own email address over here. Next comes the subject field. So in this case, what was the subject? The subject was movie plans. So I type the same subject over here. Then you select the number of notifications that you want to receive. So in this case, I want to receive 3 notifications. So you can specify as many notifications you want. What I mean by notifications is, imagine you send an email to your friend. Each time your friend opens that email, you want to be informed about his latest IP address. That is what the number of notifications means. Then you select this tracking image. So there's only one tracking image, which is the white colored image. And then you press the Get Tracking Image button. So within a few seconds, the tracking image has been activated. So you need to, or has been displayed on the screen. So if you notice, this is the tracking image. You can copy it if you want by right-clicking, or you just drag it. So I'm going to drag it to the other window where the email is there. So I drag it to this email, and if you notice, the tracking image has been pasted. Can anybody watching this lecture see the tracking image? I'll give all of you a minute. Can you see the tracking image? Probably not, because it's completely invisible. So that's the beauty of this particular technique. The victim will have no clue as to what is going on. The email has now been sent, and now you just have to wait for the victim to check his inbox. So let me refresh my inbox. If you notice, I have received an email, and it says movie plans is a subject, and it says, hey dude, let's go for a movie tonight, let me know. Can anybody see the tracking image on the screen? If you can, then there's something wrong with your eyes, because there's actually nothing that is visible. It is completely invisible. That is the beauty of this particular technique. It's completely invisible, and now if you notice, there's some kind of, so if I kind of highlight something, then if you notice there's some kind of image that has been displayed, right? So the reason why the image was displayed now is the solution of the technique that I want to share with all of you, right? So let's first, I'll come to the solution in a minute, but right now let's find out the IP address of the person who's actually read the email. So if you notice, when I refresh my inbox, I have received an email from getnotify.com saying that my email movie plans has been read, and it has now displayed more information about the person who's opened that email. First of all, the IP address of the person who opened the email was 66.249.80.75. So that is the IP address of the person who opened the email. Not only that, it tells you the operating system being used and the browser being used to open the email. So the browser, it says Mozilla, and it says Windows XP. And it says that this email was opened from Mountain View, United States. Now that is not true. If you remember, I'm obviously in Mumbai right now, opening this email. Why is the location Mountain View showing up? So this is why, this is where I like to make a very important distinction. So whenever you're trying to find the IP address of the victim using email tracking, there can be two scenarios. The first scenario is that the victim is using Gmail or Hotmail. So in Gmail or Hotmail, what happens is the IP address that gets found is Google's IP address or Hotmail's IP address, because the email is opened on the Gmail server or the Google server. So that is why the IP address that you're able to find out is the Gmail or Google IP address or the Hotmail IP address. The second scenario is you send this to a corporate email account. So it could be, say, companyname.com, some kind of email address like that. So in such a scenario, the IP address will be of the victim. So a couple of years ago, getnotify.com would work on both Gmail and corporate or web-based email service and also corporate. But now what's happened is that to protect the security of the victim, Gmail has stopped displaying the IP address of the actual person. So this technique will allow you to find out the victim's IP only if it is a corporate email account. Otherwise, the IP address that gets displayed is the Google server IP address or the Hotmail server IP address. So now that you know how this technique works, what is the solution? I'd like all of you to think about the solution. How do you protect yourself against this particular technique? If your friend is trying to find out your IP address by sending an email to you, how do you prevent that IP address from being found out? So whenever you're thinking of a solution, you need to think about actually what the method is. What is the method using The method is using a tracking image or a tracking photograph. So how do you actually prevent it? You can disable photos in your email account. So if you're using, say, Outlook Express, you can go into the settings and disable photos. Only the photos that you want to view, you can right click and then it will be viewed. Similarly in Gmail also, it is possible to disable photos, which is why if you notice that small image thing was getting displayed on my machine, and I told you that I'll come to the solution very soon and explain to you. So this is what I have implemented on my account. So nobody can send a tracking photograph to me to find out my email address or my IP address. So if you disable photos in your email account, or if you disable HTML emails and only enable plain text emails, then what will happen is whenever an email is sent to you, no tracking photograph will get opened at all. No HTML email will get opened at all. Only plain text emails will open, and as a result, your computer's IP address cannot be found out at all. So that is how you as a criminal can find out somebody else's IP address, and at the same time, that is how you can protect yourself or protect your IP address from being found out by a criminal. The website address is getnotify.com. It's obviously available free of cost to all of you. Now, for some reason, if getnotify.com does not work, don't worry. There are plenty of other similar websites. There's another website known as didtheyreadit.com. It works exactly the same fashion. Whenever you want to find out somebody else's IP address, all you have to do is type that person's email address, and at the end of the email address, so if my email address, if you're sending an email to me and my email address says ankit@ankitfadia.com, then when you're sending the email to me and you want to find out my IP address, you got to type ankit@ankitfadia.com .didtheyreadit.com. So by adding that extra thing at the end of the recipient's email address, you are enabling the tracking, and you can actually find out the victim's IP address. So if you do not understand it, don't worry, just go to didtheyreadit.com, and they explain with screenshots exactly what procedure you need to follow, what steps you need to follow to find out the victim's IP address. There's yet another website known as politemail.com. Again, they use tracking photographs to find out the victim's IP address. Now, let's kind of modify this technique slightly. So the first technique was you take an email, send it to the victim, and the email contains a tracking photograph. But what if the victim has disabled photographs or disabled HTML emails? Then obviously this won't work. So instead, what you can do is, you can attach some file to your email and send that email to the victim. And if the victim opens your file, what if you were able to find out the victim's IP address? So this technique is known as file tracking. So the first technique was image tracking or photo tracking. But the second technique is file tracking. So there's a website known as readnotify.com. Readnotify.com, which basically allows you to implement image tracking, which we had seen earlier. But at the same time, it allows you to create a PDF file, for example, which has tracking capability built in. So you send an email to your friend or to the victim with a PDF file attached, and when the victim opens the email, nothing will happen. Even if the victim has disabled photos, it's okay. Even if the victim has disabled HTML emails, it's okay. But the moment the victim opens the attachment, opens a PDF file or Word document or Excel file that you've attached, automatically the file tracking will start, and your computer's or the victim's IP address will be sent to you. As simple as that. So file tracking is the ability to find out the victim's IP address by attaching a file to an email and sending that email to the victim. So if you notice, this is a screenshot of an email that I had sent to my friend, and as soon as my friend opened that particular email, I found out his IP address and his exact location as well. So that concludes the first technique of finding out somebody else's IP address, that is by sending an email to them. And just to recap, within that first technique, there are two different techniques. The first technique is using a tracking photograph. The second technique is using a tracking file attachment. So you can use both the different techniques within the first technique of sending an email to the victim. The second technique of finding out somebody else's IP address is, what if instead of you sending an email to the victim, what if the victim has sent an email to you? How do you then track the victim's IP address? How do you trace an email back to the sender? So this is the second technique of finding out somebody else's IP address. So imagine the following scenario. So scenario is the CEO of a big company has received an abusive email, and it has been sent from some fake, say, India Times email account. And police has called you for help. So how do you find out who sent that email, and how do you find out the IP address of that person? So what do you need to find out? Number one, you need to find out the IP address of sender. Number two, you need to find out location of sender as well. Location means country, city, ISP, and so on. So that is the scenario over here. So how do you actually, if you have received an email, how do you actually trace it back? So every email has something known as email headers. Now, email headers are essentially the properties of an email. So all the emails that are sent on the internet contain something known as email headers. And email headers, like I mentioned, are properties of an email that contain information about the source of the email, where the email originated, how did it travel through the internet to reach your system. So that is what email headers are all about. Every single email that is sent or received on the internet must contain an email header. So obvious question here is how to open email headers. So I like to give a demonstration to all of you in Gmail. So let me actually open up my Gmail account, and I'm going to try to open some email that I may have received, and then I'll try to give you a demonstration of how to trace that email back to its sender. So if all of you look at the screen, I have received this email from Amazon.in, and I want to find out the IP address of the sender. So what do? I open this email. So you got to imagine that this is like an abusive email, right? So I open this email, and on the right hand side top corner, there is a down arrow button. So I click on this down arrow button, and I click on this link which says show original. So I click on down arrow button and click on show original, and in a new window, the email headers of this email will get displayed. So if you notice, I have highlighted the entire email headers of the email that has been sent to me. So these are the email headers of that abusive email that I received. So whenever you receive an email and when you want to trace an email back, you need to follow two steps. Step number one, open the email headers of that email. So we just saw in Gmail how to do that. Similarly, if you're using, say, Yahoo or Hotmail or a corporate email account, you can go to properties or settings of your account, and there will be an option which says full view, advanced view, or full headers. So enable that option and the email headers will get displayed on the screen. Once you have opened the email headers, the next step is you got to analyze the email headers. And there are two ways to analyze the email headers. One is a manual technique. The second is an automatic technique. So today I'll show you both the manual technique and also the automatic technique of tracing an email back to the sender. So let us look at the manual technique first. So the manual technique is very simple. And in fact, it is I would like to call it the shortcut technique. Because it is not 100% accurate, but it still gives you a good idea of how to trace the email. Or how to trace the email back to the sender. So the manual or the shortcut technique is, once you have opened the email headers, you copy the entire email headers and you paste them into this notepad file. So if all of you look at the screen, this is the notepad file, and I copied the email headers from Gmail and I pasted them over here. So you can now actually start analyzing the email headers manually to find out the IP address of the person who sent this email to you. So just give me a minute while my computer is still processing this for some reason. Okay, there you go. So once you have copied the email headers to a notepad file, the trick is to start at the bottommost line. And so this is the bottommost line. Can you see an IP address in the bottommost line? Probably not. So you can delete that line. So you repeat this procedure. Look at the bottommost line. Is there an IP address? No. Again, bottommost line. Is there an IP address? No. So keep repeating this until you find a line which has an IP address. So if you notice, I am just repeating the same thing, looking at the bottommost line and looking for an IP address. And I'm still not able to find the IP address. So I keep repeating this until I find some kind of IP address mentioned. So if you notice, here, is there an IP address? Yes. Here, is there an IP address? No. So I get rid of this. So now finally I found a line which has an IP address. It says 176.32.105.71 is the permitted sender. So typically, the first IP address that you find from the bottom part of the email header, by eliminating one by one each and every line that does not have an IP address, you can find out the IP address of the sender. So in this case, chances are that the email that I received has been sent from this IP address, that is 176.32.105.71. As simple as that. Please remember, a disclaimer here is that this technique is not 100% accurate, but it is a shortcut technique. Anybody can do this. Within a few minutes, you can find out the IP address of the person who sent that email to you. And once you have the IP address, you can trace an IP address to its location. And later on today, in today's lecture, we'll be discussing how to trace an IP address to its location. But right now, we have just concluded the demonstration of if somebody sends an email to you, if it's an abusive email, you want to find out who sent that email to you. So this is what you need to do to find out the IP address of the sender. Even if it is not an abusive email. Let's assume your friend sent an email to you. You want to find out your friend's IP address because you want to hack into their computer. Even then, this technique that I just demonstrated to you is very useful. Because by just analyzing the email headers, you can find out the IP address of the sender. As simple as that. So you can do this in Gmail, which I just gave a demonstration to you of. At the same time, you can do this in Yahoo as well. Just click on settings and then full header. And if you notice, the full header of the email has been displayed on the screen. I have included a screenshot for all of you. Now this was the manual technique of analyzing an email header, there is an automatic technique as well. And for the automatic technique, you need to download a software called Email Tracker Pro. Email Tracker Pro. Email Tracker Pro is a software that you can download from the internet. It is not free, but you can download the trial version, which allows you to use it for 15 days or so, completely free of cost. And the way this Email Tracker Pro software works is, once you open the email headers, you copy the email headers and you paste the email headers into this particular software.